And I think to myself, what a beautiful world. Skies are blue and the clouds are white. This song is a true testament that we do indeed live in a magnificently beautiful world. This earth we live on is marked with lots of beauty, both on land, in water, as well as in space. If you look closely, you'll discover some very cool things in unlikely places. Some of these places, though, can be haunted, dangerous, as well as deadly. We have trains, planes, cars, and so many more. You won't believe what they found in the middle of nowhere. Before we get to it, be sure to click the subscribe button and click the notification bell for more amazing content. Let's begin. Doomsday Bunker City. This former army base that consisted of 475 private military bases built of concrete and steel bunkers is now repurposed and affordably priced and ready to provide life-saving shelter. The Black Hills Army Base was built by the Army Corps engineers as a fortress to store bombs and ammunition from 1942 to 1967, when the entire army base was completely retired. Vivos now owns the property and the bunkers. This place is located near the Black Hills area of South Dakota. Where the base was retired in 1967, it was used as a cattle ranch and has been repurposed as the biggest private shelter community on Earth for as many as 5,000 people to survive virtually any catastrophic event, as well as the aftermath. Sounds like a party. Each bunker is 80 by 26.5 feet and can accommodate 24 people with food, water, fuel and supplies for more than a year. A 99-year lease on a bunker costs $1,000 a year, plus $25,000 deposit that you need to pay up front. It's spread across approximately 18 square miles. The off-grid areas are surrounded by a fence and reached by a road or a nearby municipal airport. It's the perfect place in case there's a zombie apocalypse. Siberian Snowballs. In the middle of a beach in Siberia, a very strange yet natural phenomenon gets everybody whispering and murmuring. These crazy snowballs appeared from nowhere and gave the locals of the village Yama Peninsula quite a shocker. This beach out in the Arctic was home to some very perfect and spherical snowballs, ranging in size from a couple of inches to almost 3 feet across. The villagers were baffled when they came across these balls and told the reporters they'd never seen anything like this in their village. So what's the explanation? The Siberian snowballs first showed up in October when the slush-frozen water rose, coating the shore in a layer of ice. As tides went up, the winds rolled the ice along the beach, forming the snowballs in a myriad of shapes and sizes. It looks so cute, and it's such a shame that the balls would eventually melt. Maybe one day the snowballs will return once more. King Richard III's grave. Time for a pop quiz. What's the craziest thing you've ever found in a parking lot? A couple of dollars left behind by a random stranger? Or some worthless garbage tossed from someone's car? In this parking lot in Leicester, England, an awesome discovery was made that's now considered one of the most important and historical finds in British history. Archaeologists and researchers from the University of Leicester could not believe their eyes when they found the skeleton of a member of the royal family, King Richard III, who had one of the shortest reigns among all British monarchs. He sat on the throne for just 2 years, and this was between 1483 and 1485. It's not that he was not a legendary king. He's often described as a bloodthirsty tyrant and was the last king of England to die in battle. He passed many laws that are still in effect today, including the concept of bail. He enjoyed life to the fullest and enjoyed a diet of wine, swan, crane and heron. So what was His Highness doing in a parking lot? Turns out the building was once a church called Greyfriars, which was home to the 13th century monks. The historians suspect that the king was killed after 2 blows to the head in the Battle of Bosworth before the church was abolished in the reign of King Henry VIII. Since finding the grave, a few facts were uncovered. That the king was related to the British actor Benedict Cumberbatch, and they are actually third cousins 16 times removed. Spooky sea forts. The Maunsell Army Fort and the Thames Estuary are a decaying reminder of World War II when it was dark and gloomy. During the war, London's ports were vulnerable to bombings in the air and at sea. The answer lay in building forts at sea so that foreign planes and boats could be destroyed before reaching land. They were built on land, then translocated to the water homes and designed by Guy Maunsell, a British civil engineer. The anti-aircraft forts were constructed in 1942, with each fort having 7 stilted buildings surrounding a central command tower, and when operational catwalks connected the buildings, access for soldiers to the forts was via an entrance at the base of the building. Parts of the ladders that the men used are still visible today, but are in very poor condition. Trying to access these forts is a hazard after their successful use in World War II. They were decommissioned in the 1950s. One fort was in extremely bad shape after being hit by a ship and was dismantled in 1959 to 1960. In the 60s and 70s, the forts were taken over as pirate radio stations. Creepy car cemetery. Up to 100 cars in various conditions were discovered cascading down the inside of a cave in Cardigan, Wales. A mountain of abandoned cars in the 70s was found 200 feet down an abandoned slate mine. The waterfall formation can be found lit up by a beam of light, and there are hundreds of cars on top of each other. The cave is known as the Cavern of Lost Souls. Explorers made a treacherous journey through the darkness in dangerous conditions and were stunned to find a car graveyard that closed in 1960. The mine opened up around 1836 and closed up around 1960, and it's been abandoned since then. These images are from the lost souls of abandoned cars and are still untouched since they were left there. No one knows how the cars got there in the first place. This mountain of cars and scrap metal rises over 100 feet below the lake surface. Some cars lay hidden there, silently decaying. There's something so surreal about this exploration. It's totally dark, slippery, and very dangerous. A Georgian Church. Surrounded by quiet Georgian mountains, this naturally towering pillar is almost inaccessible. The first person to ever live there was a monk who was trying to avoid all worldly temptations. A tiny collection of religious buildings is patched up on the top of this 130-foot-high limestone monolith, and it's a good 20-minute hike from the nearest village. The inspiring structure can only be reached by a thin metal ladder bolted onto the rock face, and there's also an ingenious winch system that allows the villagers on the ground to send food up and save the trip upwards, which would be back-breaking. So, what lies in the middle of the stone column? There's a tiny Orthodox church, burial chamber, a wine cellar, and 3 hermit cells. There's also a crypt with the bones of the monks who lived there in the days gone by. Would you entertain the thoughts of living up the Kachiki pillar? Bosnian Sphere. Deep in the woods of Bosnia and Herzegovina lies a huge rock that has placed this small village on the map. The mystery ball has a diameter of 10.8 feet and weighs almost 35 tons, twice as heavy as the Costa Rican stone sphere. But how did this stone make its way to southeastern Europe? Scientists are at odds. One archaeologist, better known as the Bosnian Indiana Jones, suggests that this stone was made by an ancient civilization that lived in the area 1,000 years ago, with advanced tech that was ahead of its time. If indeed it was created by humans, the Bosnian sphere could be the biggest man-made sphere ever to be discovered. Some scientists are, however, skeptical that this strange stone ball in the forest is actually proof of a lost civilization. They're inclined to believe that this rock is as a result of a well-known geological occurrence called concretion, which is rich in iron. This actually explains the red coloration of the Bosnian sphere. What do you think? Is this rock from the future or from the past? Abandoned fairy tale village. One of the most beautiful parts of northwest Turkey is a deep valley that's covered with dense pine forest and blessed with thermal springs, as well as rows upon rows of identical castle-like chateaux. But when you look a little closer, something is off. The roads between them are unfinished and there's debris everywhere. There's no soul in sight. It's a fairy tale ghost town that started as an ambitious and luxurious development project that fell victim to mismanagement and global financial ruin. The ghost town is located a few miles from the historic town of Medunu. By the early 2000s, Medunu and its thermal springs had attracted property developers, and Burj Al Babas was born, a location of luxurious holiday homes catering for wealthy clients. There would be a Turkish bath, a shopping and entertainment centre. The future of the 300 chateaux close to each other is uncertain, and the project has been a cautionary tale for developers. Turkish officials have even suggested that the town be made a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Elephant at sea. When a Sri Lankan ship was patrolling the country's northeastern coast, they came to a very outrageous discovery. The last thing you'd expect to find 15 kilometers from shore is an enormous elephant. This is what they saw via their binoculars. Once they saw the elephant struggling in the water, a rescue mission was set up to rescue the bewildered animal. The rescue operation took 12 hours. Wildlife explains that the elephant was swept into the ocean as it tried to cross Kokilai Lagoon, a body of water in between 2 sections of the Sri Lankan jungle. Although elephants are considered to be the best swimmers of all mammals, salt water can damage their skin. That, combined with the energy it takes to swim, it can exhaust a fully grown elephant. The poor elephant was almost completely submerged and was using its trunk as a makeshift snorkel in its attempt to survive. In scuba gear, the rescue team used ropes to tie the elephant and pulled it back to safety. Jumbo the elephant was returned back to land safe and secure. Secret presidential subway station. There are secrets under our feet. Above as well as under in New York, one capsule that remains out of reach is Track 61, which at one end is found behind a locked door on 49th Street. The infamous Track 61 is still in use as a secret escape train for presidents that are visiting the city. The station is not much to look at, but there's a unique antique train car parked in the hidden powerhouse. Track 61 is located beneath the Waldorf-Astoria New York Hotel, beneath an underground storage northeast of the Grand Central Terminal and as part of that terminal complex. The earliest use of the track was during the tenure of Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had his car transported to the station. These also have rumoured to have entered and exited through the station. Track 61 is famous for the comings and goings of many American presidents. From military to celebrity, many more are said to have used the track, but given the amount of secrecy involved, all are hard to confirm. The unmarked brass door leading to the station proves that someone important is still using the track. Ghost Town of Fire. This place boasted 14 active coal mines and 2,500 residents in the early 20th century. By the 1960s, its boom time heyday had passed and most of the mines were abandoned, but over 1,000 people still called it home until a coal mine fire started below. When the coal mine fire began, residents thought it would die down, but the coal mine Centralia fire is still burning 60 years later. In 1962, a fire began in a landfill and spread to the tunnels that miners had dug thousands of feet below the surface. Competing theories exist on how the Centralia fires began, said that they sparked a much bigger fire beneath the town. Despite repeated attempts to put off the flames, the fire still burns to this day and releases poisonous smoke into the air. The ground is under threat of collapsing any time. The mines that defined Centralia for all those years are also so many mines underneath that could be fueling the fires. Deadliest garden in the world. An English duchess created this garden and only planted poisonous plants, and in the garden there were about 100 legendary killers. More gardens have been planted in that area, but the first two were down in 1750. By 1950 the garden had closed. The Duchess came by an overgrown, neglected section and decided to restore it into a new, modern garden. The garden was opened in 2005 and the Duchess shied away from planting healing medicinal plants and instead opted for poisonous plants. Also in the garden you'll find narcotics such as opium, cannabis, magic mushrooms and tobacco. Tour guides showcase the plants while keeping the guests away from them, warning them of imminent danger. Guests are not to touch or smell any of the plants since they can kill. The danger posed by the plants is very real. Some plants are caged and the gates to the garden are locked in the evenings and there's a guard there at all times. The Church of Ghosts. You can't miss this in the tiny town of Vukovar in the Czech Republic. This long-abandoned building that's filled with eerie white figures. The church is packed with ghost-like figures that sit solemnly in the pews, altar and doorways. This church was consecrated in 1382 and the locals thought that the building was haunted. The congregation started holding Mass outside. It was abandoned in 1968 after the roof collapsed. In 2014, a professor of fine arts in West Bohemia asked the students to find a church for an art installation. Jacob Ardrava used his classmates as models and covered them in sheets and created plasticine models. The statues represent German Bohemian, an ethnic group that used to live in the area and was expelled from the Czech Republic in World War II. Such a creative way to make social commentary on the region's history. Do you believe in ghosts, or is it just a very unique art idea? Mystery Jet. This is neither an airport nor an airplane yard. This abandoned 737 sits in an abandoned field near some limestone quarry. What's crazy is that no one knows how it got there. With its size, you'd think someone would care to notice the arrival of a Boeing 737, but no, looks like everyone here is just minding their own business. It's located near the southern coast in Bali, and maybe it was purchased and reassembled where it currently stands, but the weird thing is no one saw it arrive. Some locals believe it was meant to be converted into a high-end restaurant, but the owner ran out of money and left it to rust. The vessel is locked in a gate where it sits on private land and it's protected by a security guard, and if you want to get in you have to pay a fee. The plane is a tourist attraction and tourists come out looking to visit its inside. Turns out it's not the only abandoned plane that's a tourist attraction on the Indonesian island. 5 miles away there's another abandoned 737 that's next to a donut shop. Benson Ford Ship House. There is no other home in the world with a view quite like this one hanging over Lake Erie. The enormous boat was once a cargo ship that carried well-known people such as Henry Ford and Thomas Edison to their destinations in style. However, its main purpose was to transport coal and iron ore around the Great Lakes for the Ford Motor Company. The Benson Ford was built in 1924 and served its purpose until it was decommissioned in 1981. For a while it sat derelict and rusting. Then in 1986 it was purchased and its forecastle was cut off and installed on a cliff overlooking Lake Erie. The ship's original buyer wanted to turn the Benson Ford into a hotel, but the local government blocked his move. The ship was then sold in 1999 to a father and son who used the structure as a holiday getaway. They also allow guided tours through the majestic ship. Such an array of strange things in the middle of nowhere. There's more where that came from. Like and subscribe.